So now, when you work, what's your like? Do you get up at 4 in the morning, write 500 words?
Well,
How does that?
when I wrote the first two books, I wasn't working full time.
Okay.
So, I had a little more time. I was working 3 days a week, 4 days a week. But this book was a little different, and I had to, I'd get up at 5 in the morning, do 2 hours of writing, or all of a sudden I'd get inspired about 11 at night and write for a couple of hours. Sometimes I'd wake up in the middle of the night, couldn't sleep.
Right.
Some things came to my mind, so I'd jot them down and then make sure I remembered the next day and wrote. It was sporadic.
Computer,
Yeah.
naturally.
Well, actually, I wrote longhand. I just have the hardest time typing away on the computer initially.
I think I write longhand because I'm pretty slow on the computer, but I like to write it longhand, look at it for a couple of minutes, and then change things around a
Yeah.
little bit. And if I knew how to change them around on the computer, I'd do that,
Right,
but I don't
right.
know. And before I know, the words are scattered all over the page, and I have to put it away. But so I prefer to write it out
Right.
longhand. Now, so you try and work every day, 7 days a week?
Well, now I work Monday through Thursday, 10 hours.
No, I mean in the writing
Oh,
part.
I'm sorry. Yes, in the writing. Well, right now I'm not doing much writing. I'm just starting to promote this,
Yeah.
which is a lot of work. I have some people helping me, but it's a lot of work just doing that. So at night I'm busy trying to get that done and get some interviews and.
How about the publisher? Is that a difficult thing to find a publisher?
Yeah, this is
have to-
actually a different publisher than I had before. It's Libros International, and they're located in Spain, but they have an office in the United States as well. But basically everything is done long distance. Everything is emailed to each other and all that. They're a great group. So far, so good, and that's the hard part, finding a publisher.
It's the old movies. They made movies about it. You keep sending your envelope out, and they read it out there, and they send it back, and it's got the rejection
A
button
million
on it.
rejections.
A million
and
rejections.
you hear, I belong to the National Writers Union, and a rejection is just part of being a writer.
Right.
And
Can't
you just
take it
don't
personally.
know. And I learned something interesting. John Grisham, who's a
Yeah.
best-selling
Right.
author, wrote 4 books. He started giving away his last books. He just felt like such a failure. He was giving them away. And then he hooked up with this book club, and he gave his books to this book club, and then it started to snowball. And now look at him.
Yeah, it's just one of those strange things. But people who are famous now would be on like Emily Rooney on Channel 2, at 7:30. They come in, they write a book like John Grisham. He writes a book. He goes right to the head of the class. He's in there talking about his book. But somebody
Right.
who hasn't had success yet
Yeah.
has got to go and do all these other things. Like, could you go to? Is this book available online, Barnes and Noble,
Yeah,
all
you
that?
can get it at any online bookstore, or you can go into, right at this moment, you can go into a bookstore. It might be in some bookstores, but you can order it, and it will be there within 4 or 5 days.
How does it? Just to regress. a
Or you
little bit.
can get it through my website as well. I have copies.
When you, because I never wrote a book now, so when you start, do you start right at the very beginning in 1951, or do you say, let's see, Molly's 19 years old and she's off being bad and blah, 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 and kind of work the whole thing around? Or how does that part of it work?
Well,
Or do you start at the end and go this way?
No, I start from the beginning.
Right from the very beginning?
Yeah, start from the beginning. I knew in my head, well, what I did initially is I had an outline.
Right.
I had focused on key words that I wanted to bring into the book.
I love
Catholicism.
I love puzzle pieces.
Yeah.
When he was trying to put the puzzle pieces together, because that's I think a common thing. People have these thoughts, and you have a thought here and a thought there, and then you're trying to put the pieces together. I thought that was a nice term
yeah, and
that he
that's
was
how-
using, trying to figure out where he was in his own head.
Right.
So you had
Exactly.
you wrote down an outline.
Yeah,
And
I
then-
knew what I wanted the content to be. I just didn't know how to do it. I was also trying to write with my family of origin in mind, because I didn't want them to think it was about us.
Oh, yeah, right, yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
you know,
That
I
would be
just-
automatically somebody say, your sister would be saying, you wrote that
Well,
about
yeah,
me, yeah.
yeah. And actually, the basically all read it, and they're, you know, they're still talking to me. They
Yeah,
don't
good,
think it had to
good.
do with
That's
my
good.
family.
Yeah. So like when you, before you wrote the first one now, let's go back a little bit. Do you decide to say, I think I'll write a book? Wow. Must have
Well,
woke up
what-
one day and said, well, I could write a book.
Well, what happened with that was I was a visiting nurse, and I would go into different patients' houses. And I went into this one guy's house, and I know he won't mind me mentioning his name because he was on TV with me. His name was Joe Lombardo, and
Lombardo.
he was from Burlington. And I would have to call other patients from his house to say I'm on my way or
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah.
And they would give me a hard time for whatever reason, or I'd have to make a doctor's phone call, but I would make him laugh. I mean, I had to go in there twice a day to change his dressing. So I'd make him laugh and tell him stories about certain patients without mentioning names, HIPAA laws. So
And he said, you should write a book.
Yes, he did. He said, why
Yeah,
don't
right.
you write a book?
Book,
And so
yeah.
one day I'm jogging around Horn Pond, and I said, you know what? I'm just going to put this all together. And I started to. And while I was doing it, my mom died in 1998, and I had to go up the attic. That was my job in her house in Watertown,
Yeah.
where I grew up, and I had to clean out the attic, and I found all my nursing books and my nurse's notes from 1970, 71 when I graduated. And I said, oh my God, look at these. So it was meant to happen. It was just the stories.
Now, how do you get to, when you started in 51, you started progressing along through the 60s, and now you begin to say, how am I going to wrap this up? Or does it just flow? Like, does
It just flows. It just came to me. It just came to me. The book was actually 450 pages, and they knocked it down 100 pages.
They take them out.
Yeah.
Do you have to argue about that? Do we argue about that? Well, I want that in there.
Yeah, we did, but it wasn't arguing.
No, it's
It was-
the editor.
Yeah. She would say, I suggest.
Right. They have editors here. They'll edit this. And I'll say,
Yeah.
they'll say, we should take that out. And I say, no, I want that. No, they say, no, because
Yeah.
it's their job. An editor's
To
job
edit.
is to make you better.
Right.
That's their job. And they do a very, very good
Yeah.
job of it, too.
Yeah.
So that'll be,
true.
that all sounds wonderful. So, Kate, this is great. I'm glad you came in.
I'm very
Now, what I
happy.
want you to do is shake my hand and give your website. You have a website
do.
and email or whatever you want. You give it out, and then later on we'll write it down. We'll give it to Kevin, and he'll put it up when we put up the credit. So you give it right
The
now.
website's simply my name. It's kategenovese.com. So www.kate, K-A-T-E, Genovese, Genovese.com. And goes to my website, and you know, it also gives events that I have coming up. I have a book signing this Saturday. We'll probably be way past that, but I'll have some other things
Where is the
coming
book
up.
sign?
This one is in Watertown at the church I go to.
Do you schedule these things? You try and do this yourself? Or do you
Well,
have,
this one I did myself, and
Yeah.
I just did one. I did Earth Day at the Woburn Mall with with the writers group. So we had a table.
and the people stop and talk to you?
Yeah, I actually
Really?
did pretty good without any advertising. I'm very grateful for that. And a couple of the other authors, Magi Ragucci, I don't know if you know Hirsch.
Marcy
About
Ragucci?
Marcy.
Yeah, I do.
And
I didn't
Jean
know
Freeman.
she wrote a book, though.
Yeah. Jean Freeman, she was a teacher at the Clap. I had her books
Yep.
for sale.
Yep,
Katie's Pond. So, you know, it was a fun day.
that's great.
Yeah.
That's great. Again, right here, 2 weeks since my last confession. It's very, I'll have to say, I read it, I was enjoyable. It has a lot of stuff in here that I related to because of the 50s and the 60s, the 70s, and right up to date. And it's a pretty complicated story, but it's a pretty true story too.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot,
Thank you
Kate.
very much.